Folks, we're out organized, we're out funded, and folks, we are going to still win if we decide to fight back. In this video, for those of you who are ready to fight back, this video is for you. Let's get ready to grumble.
Let's get ready to grumble!
This is a different edition of Let's Get Ready to Grumble. You know, it's just kind of one of those weird moments where the brothers contacted me and said, hey, Steve, you know, we've got to take the weekend off. We're still blown away by our last video with Miss Kelton. And I was like, don't worry, guys. I'll take this one. I got it. But what I did was I came out here into the city. I'm actually in the city of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, right on the waterfront of the Susquehanna. And of all nights, it's really dark tonight. But I wanted to talk to you all about something important, and that is why I told the brothers I got this. You see, there is a huge right-wing attack going on that most of us see certain aspects of. But the vast majority of us don't understand the right-wing attack that is happening economically. And some of the attacks that they're bringing at us involve this whole concept that we're printing money. And by explaining to regular citizens that we have inflation, and we have this inflation because we've printed money.
It has to print more money to buy its own bonds, which are used to pay the bills. Wait, what? The more money floating around out there, the less value it has, meaning prices go up, and it'll take a whole lot more of the green to buy that car, that house, that Xbox, iPad, or Wii. Not you and me, you know, we. And your savings account. Ever heard of the incredible shrinking man? Yeah, that would be your savings with hyperinflation.
It makes people who are normally fellow travelers lose their minds. It makes them think, oh my God, we've got to do something. What are we going to do to stop this inflation? And the right wing is right there, as they've always been. At least since Uncle Milty, since Milton Friedman.
People act from self-interest. The citizens of Russia act from self-interest in the same way as the citizens of the United States do. The difference between the two countries is in what determines self-interest. The man in the United States who is serving as a foreman in a factory, his self-interest leads him to worry about not getting fired. The man in Russia who is acting as foreman in a factory, his self-interest leads him to worry about not being fired at.
And they tell you point blank that the problems we have in society today are directly resulting from moochers and takers getting free handouts, and it's causing inflation. Now, this is one of many, many, many tactics that they're going to use over the next period of time. And so it brings us to this point where we've got to really make some decisions, some different decisions. The Democrats, instead of fighting back against these right-wing narratives, they just punt. They just give up. They just go ahead and say, yeah, we've got horrible inflation. We've got to do something to fight it. And so what is their answer? Well, of course, their answer is to cut spending. And they have cut spending. But the other answer that they have is to raise interest rates, which they continue to do over and over and over and over again, and will continue to raise interest rates until the economy goes deep into recession. Now, I want you to understand something. This is not just a US-based thing. The same talking points about deficit reduction, about cutting spending, about raising interest rates has taken over the entire world, but it's not a takeover, folks. This is the thing that you must understand. It is not a takeover in any way. they are already in power. The people that talk about printing money causes inflation, they're already in power. The people that are busy telling you that we've got to raise interest rates to stop inflation are already in power. The people that think it's elitist to take children with student debt and give them relief, they're already in control. Those people that think that that's elitist. They're already in control. Those people that would tell you, why should we forgive anyone's student debt? I paid mine. You see, the right-wing attacks are there to make sure that if you can get past the fact that the government creates money all the time and spends it all the time, they already have the next roadblock up. And the next roadblock is always about makers and takers. It's always about moochers. It's always about people getting over.
Yes, I agree with the facts, but not the estimates of this criticism. Namely, if I am challenging the base of all these institutions, I'm challenging the moral code of altruism, the precept that man's moral duty is to live for others.
And you see this in the immigration discussion. You see this as DeSantis and other scumbags send undocumented people in a foreign country, send them on a bus and send them far away in a place they have no idea where they are.
Florida's Republican governor is facing a new legal battle over those controversial flights traveling migrants to Martha's Vineyard.
DeSantis has dismissed those claims and yesterday doubled down.
This was not an issue of concern even 2 weeks ago. Now it seems to be on the front burner, so we're proud of that.
Okay? This is once again intended to literally bait and switch the whole conversation. See, in the end, there's a couple things at play. ADOS folks are angry at immigrants because typically immigrants are used to beat down our American citizens that are black and brown. They are used to keep them down. They bring in immigrants. Now, this is not the way it has to be. This is not an indication that immigrants are bad. In fact, immigrants are great. We need immigrants in this country. Massive amounts. In fact, we should drop the boundaries, drop the borders. We should allow free and open immigration. But because we don't, we frame the immigration story even as if it is 100% about a scarcity of jobs. There's no jobs, they're taking our jobs. Well, there's an answer for that. It's called a federal job guarantee. So the minute you say, I've got an answer for that, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to say, but that's socialism. See, federal spending, government spending, public purpose spending is not socialism. Socialism is a balance between state-owned and capitalist, individual-owned enterprise. It's about the balance of labor and capital, and whether capital should exist for private betterment or whether it should exist for the public good. Now, if you know who I am, you know I stand for a complete and utter nationalizing of almost all necessary industry. That housing should be nationalized. I believe that energy should be nationalized. I think we should eradicate, either re-regulate banks back to their original charter, or we should completely and utterly rewrite the role of banks. Banks were always intended to be public purpose, but they've been deregulated. And see, but by allowing all this lies to go in there, to make it seem like we don't have, we're able to get people who are vulnerable down at the bottom to hate their neighbor, to hate each other, to hate immigrants. By creating a false scarcity narrative, one that isn't real, it's fake, it's based on a lack of dollars, which we create freely, folks. And so as I tell you this story, as I explain to you the fact that the right wing is laying the groundwork for all these things, to limit our ability to have freedom, to limit our ability to survive without desperation, to limit those things. The right wing is fighting tooth and nail to ensure that those who are moneyed get more money and those who are money less get more in debt. This is not in any way, shape, or form controversial. And when I say right wing, I'm not just talking about Republicans. Okay? The framing, the conversations, all of this stuff comes back to we can't afford it. There is no such thing as a free lunch.
What they're offering people is a full stomach and an empty soul. She once met a young boy from a very poor family. And every day at school, he would get a free lunch from a government program. He told Eloise he didn't want a free lunch. He wanted his own lunch, one in a brown paper bag, just like the other kids. He wanted one, he said, because he knew a kid with a brown paper bag had someone who cared for him. This is what the left does not understand.
There is no such thing as government doing good. So you're at this point now where you're saying to yourself, you're either fighting over social justice warrior level nothing burgers, identity politics that neoliberals use to purposely keep the working class divided, which is part of the reason why unions have failed so much in this country. That and the fact that Taft-Hartley, you name it, I mean, ultimately, our government and the people around it peddle these lies about the scarcity of money and use inflation as a scary thing. Almost every bit of this has an answer for what we could do to solve it. But you're going to go into an election here. You're going to go into an election here very, very shortly. And they're going to tell you it's the most important election of all time. They're going to show you how Republicans have gerrymandered districts. They're going to show you all the evil that they've got in store. They're going to show you that Donald Trump has openly embraced QAnon now, like openly embraced it. That 70% of Republicans believe in that stop the steal crap. They believe that this election was stolen. They believe all this stuff. And so they are firmly entrenched and totally devoted to their cause. We don't have a cause as lefties right now in this country. Our politicians, their only thing that they'll tell you is that they're anti-Republican. But when it comes to dealing with immigration, they won't tell the truth on this. What would happen if your Democratic Party was united in truth and spoke truth to the Republicans, spoke truth to the American people, and said, truth is, we can provide every single immigrant and every single person in the United States with health care as a right, with housing as a right, with education as a right, and we can do it using public money, not taxpayer dollars. What if we were able to speak directly to each lie that Republicans and conservative Democrats tell you? What if we had an answer for every single one of their pushback? Well, we do have answers for all those things. The problem is, you have to ask yourself, if you know the truth, what are you willing to do at Election Day to ensure that they know you know their truth? What are you willing to do at your local DSA meeting? What are you willing to do at your local Green Party meeting? What are you willing to do at your local Progressive Democrats of America meeting? Or your local, whatever, independent meeting, I don't care. Are you willing to go to other organizations and talk to them about the fact that the federal government can spend money on anything it wants, has no limits to its ability other than the availability of real resources? Anything that is for sale in US dollars is available by our federal government. So all this stuff, all the fights that they have, every one of them, folks, every single one of them is based on the scarcity logic. And so many will die as a result of this. So many people are going to die as a result of this. Now, there are several schools of thought out there that voting for Democrats in general will produce a pause in the shift to the right. It will cause some sort of a pause to allow organizers to organize, to allow unions to get together, because quite frankly, the Republicans have goals of stripping unions of even more power. Okay? But you know already, you've watched enough of your Peanuts, enough of your Charlie Brown and stuff to know that, you know, ultimately Lucy will snatch the ball from Charlie Brown every single time. Every time. So you've got to be prepared. If you want these things, if you want to have a better life, if you want things to go better for your children, if you want things better in elections, if you want to see real change, you must have answers for the truth. You must be able to push back against the lies. You must. Just being angry isn't enough. Then again, just being right isn't enough, because sadly, you could be right all day long, and if people won't hear you, they're not going to hear you. And see, this is what I try and do with the brothers. When we do Let's Get Ready to Grumble normally, the brothers are kind of an expression of me on steroids, if you will. You know, for many of you don't know this, but I was once a Republican. I was once a libertarian. Okay? And now I am a radicalized, MMT-informed leftist. And to me, I understand some of the inside jokes of the right. I get the language, I get the purpose, I get the angles, I get some of the sensibilities and so forth. And so I try and have some fun with it. Because unfortunately, there are a great many lefties out there, not even lefties, Democrats, they're not lefties. Real lefties wouldn't be fazed by this. There's a lot of people that are flirting with moving to the left that I'm looking at and I'm trying to talk to. Folks that are actually flirting away with being, they don't want to be centrist establishment stooges anymore. And when they start shifting, they always fail on this money side. They always fail there. Okay, they're always looking for a hero or a savior, someone else with credentials or whatever else for them to feel comfortable telling the truth. And all the while, the right wing, and you could say there is no left, there is no right. There is, though. This is an ideological thing in the way people's minds work. You can sit there and say we're all the working class, and that would be great if we actually had some class analysis, if people actually read theory and they understood the struggle and the plight of the working class, they actually understood the role of capital and the role of labor and the role that it plays in our society and how outsized us, how it's impossible to vote your way out of capitalism. Okay? The truth is scarier than many people are willing to accept. And the idea of what can I do to make this change is even scarier. Because when it comes to taking action, ultimately people are pretty comfortable. There are a lot of people that aren't, though. But for the people that are comfortable, they're not going to give up any of their comforts, even if it means somebody goes without dental work done, even if it means people die. People are terrified of losing whatever they have in this life because of the way capital bears down and just works us over. Just decimates us, puts us in the worst possible place to struggle and be afraid and constantly striving and never really being able to rest. It's that precarity, it's that fear of the axe dropping on us, getting us fired, making it so we lose our home, lose our family, lose all that we care about because of capitalism and the toll that it exacts. It's not just for greed. The intention is that if you get comfortable, you will be less compliant. So our government, this neoliberal order, wants you as uncomfortable as possible so that it can force you to accommodate the business class. It's a form of control. Austerity is control, and austerity is murder. And austerity is all about reducing spending, raising taxes, raising interest rates, making life more difficult, doing away with public solutions, and putting the burden on the individual to strive and somehow or another overcome. It's a system that intentionally breeds desperation. It requires poverty. So the question you have to ask yourself is, it's one thing to unite and struggle. We want a Green New Deal. We want a this. We want a that. But all the people that lined up behind Bernie could not overcome Bernie capitulating to the establishment. Now, I'm not going to judge Bernie. I see some good. I see some bad. Ultimately, at the end of the day, 2 fucking presidential campaigns, Bernie Sanders gave up the ghost, threw his support behind Hillary Clinton, threw his support behind his friend Joe Biden. And 2 presidential elections, the left has disintegrated into warring factions once again. Now you've got the rise of MAGA communism, which is an oxymoron if ever. The entire understanding of what it means to be a communist is being conflated with the idea of being anti-establishment. And when you understand the role of capital and labor, and you look at anarcho-capitalists and these right-wingers, and the business community and the crypto community and the neoliberals that are all in that space, makes for a pretty challenging thing to overcome, right? And as we splinter and faction even more, the establishment digs in even stronger. This is why narratives that go on, that distract us, that keep us from ever uniting, are so easy to pull off and so strong and so deeply internalized. Without us making a concerted effort to learn how to fight back against these things, and it starts with understanding, period. Like, you must understand that if you don't get that the country can afford to do all these things, you won't demand that the country do all those things. Does not matter if the Arctic is on fire. Does not matter if we're dealing with record heat. Does not matter if we're dealing with drought. Doesn't matter what we're dealing with. In the end, if you don't understand the game that capital is playing, and you don't understand that we can afford anything, and if you allow them to throw dumb lies about the Cantillon effect, which is about too much money, like this is the gold bug right-wing shit, and a lot of lefties, these MAGA commie lefties, believe that printing money causes inflation. They are the least economically literate people on the planet, bar none. And as a result, we don't just get to fight the right wing. We have to fight the other side of the horseshoe. Okay? This red-brown alliance that could serve the good of the people, because, let's be fair, the working class is not a nice, neat Democratic Party. The Democrats don't even really represent labor. Okay? Labor has no champions other than labor right now. Don't you dare lie and believe that the Democrats have done shit for labor. That's why many of the labor unions are starting to pull away from that. Speaking to people like David Van Dusen up there, Vermont AFL-CIO president, talking about what Joe Burns, who is a legal scholar and a great lawyer for unions, who wrote a book called Class Struggle Unionism. They have abandoned the idea of unions just throwing their support behind Democrats, and have instead said, if you don't support labor, we're not supporting you. And they mean it. Folks, they mean it. Are you willing to take a bold step? Are you willing to make them do what we need? Because here's the thing. You cannot show me any evidence whatsoever that the Democrats having a supermajority, being the president, the vice president who can weigh in on ties, the Senate, and Congress, all of them are literally in Democrat control. Joe Biden could have stacked the Supreme Court to offset any Roe v. Wade issue. Biden could have done so many things. He could have literally written off all student debt, didn't. Biden could have stood with Amazon, instead didn't. Biden could have stood with railway workers, instead brokered a truce because he didn't want a big major strike to happen before the election. None of this is the stuff that supporting the working class looks like. Folks, we're on our own here. We don't have a champion. And if for some reason we're able to enforce our will on the political process, it's going to be because we outside of the parties made a decision. We made a decision to not accept crumbs at the table anymore. We made a decision to rise up and fight back. We made a decision to fight corruption. We made a decision to make demands and stand by them. But until that happens, you can vote for whoever you want and you will get the same exact results. Are you willing to fight back? Are you willing to learn so that we can fight back against the right wing's lies on economics together? Because it's going to be a horrific outcome as the Federal Reserve continues to hike interest rates, as the federal government continues to slash spending, as they continue to try and mold our brains into believing that the pandemic is over so that we'll get back to normal. Nothing has changed. School is still charged through the nose. Universities have not been collared. Nothing has changed. Nothing has fundamentally changed, just like Joe Biden said. So the question becomes, what are you going to do about it? Are you ready to fight back? Or are you going to keep taking it and taking it and taking it and allowing your dreams to diminish and allow your entire life to flash before your eyes without any of the progress we so desperately need? Are you ready to fight back? I'm Steve Grumbine, and this is Let's Get Ready to Grumble. Have a good one, everybody. The brothers will be back next weekend, okay? I'm out.